I have no view actually on what they are, but can I just show some pictures?
Please.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Jamie. Let me get the So these are the Olmec heads. Santa photographed these in Mexico way back in the early 1990s. They're certainly intriguing looking. I'm not sure whether they're Africans, whether they're Polynesians, or whether they're Maya. They could well be Maya.
Or Olmec.
I'm just interested. Yes, they're Olmec. We have a strong connection between the so-called Olmec civilization and the Maya civilization. Maya, in a sense, are the inheritors of the Olmec civilization. I'm interested by things like this. I don't know what to make of them. These are Olmec figures from Trezopotes. In the center is a picture of Pharaoh Khafre wearing the Nemes headdress, and I'm just intrigued by the fact that these Olmec figures wear a very similar headdress to that. I don't know what to make of it. I'm not saying that ancient Egyptians went to Central America. I'm not saying that Central Americans went to ancient Egypt. What I'm suggesting is that maybe both of them inherited a shared idea from an ancestral civilization that was ancestral to them both. And then in the same Olmec culture, we have these images. On the left, the figure that's often referred to as the ambassador. And on the right, the figures called the danzantes, the dancer figures from Monte Alban. I mean, Flint, what do you make of these figures? What sort of ethnic group would you think they belong to?
I don't identify ethnic groups like that, man. Like, it's a stone carving. That's not how we identify ethnic groups.
No, I'm not actually interested. So good. So you don't identify an ethnic group, but do you see beards on these figures?
Yeah, and people all over the world on every continent have beards from different ethnic groups.
It's just curious that amongst the Olmecs we have this, and we have this, and we have this. And I'm just intrigued by that. I don't know.
That people look different. Yes.
I don't know what it means exactly, but I do find it intriguing.
And I see this as actually an example of the problems here, because you cite Spanish colonial literature about, say, a white Quetzalcoatl coming. You talk about this as different kinds of people. Yes, you do in Fingerprints of the Gods.
We got to get correct on this. We got to get correct on this. Are you saying that the whole story of the bearded, pale-skinned Quetzalcoatl was a Spanish invention?
Yes, I am. I can show you a depiction of Quetzalcoatl from the Spanish period.
I can show you depictions.
Wait,
I can show you depictions too.
No, can I please get the... Here we go. This is Quetzalcoatl on the Borgia Codex. This is from before any Europeans arrived in the New World. Yeah. This is on a hide. The ink has been analyzed, the hides have been analyzed, and this individual has tan skin, no beard, but a feathered headdress, because this is the Feathered Serpent god.
Well, actually, we can't see anything from that image, but that's not the point that I want to make. The point that I want to make is, do you think that the Spanish deliberately imposed an idea of Quetzalcoatl on the
I think
Mexican?
That every single source that we have of white skin in indigenous Americas comes from Spanish sources, and therefore I see it
quoting indigenous sources.
But quoting them inaccurately, because people quote things in biased ways. This happens all the time.
How do you know they're quoting them inaccurately?
Because, again, we have earlier representations of these individuals that show they don't have white skin. This is the document, Graham.
Is there a document about this Spanish conspiracy? Do you regard the peoples of Mexico, the peoples of Colombia, the peoples of Bolivia as so stupid that they would simply accept an imposition upon them by the Spaniards?
So, no, I think that interpreting these kind of sources is difficult. And so, Jamie, do you mind playing my video by Curly Tlapoyawa? He's an indigenous archaeologist here in Mexico. He is a co-host of the Tales from Atlantis podcast.
Can I interrupt you? How old is that image, the image that you just showed?
It's from like the 14th century BC.
Okay.
14th century AD, you mean?
AD, sorry, yes. I misspoke. Chill.
So this is pre-Spanish invasion?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been dated and studied, the hides and the inks.
Is there others of Quetzalcoatl from that period or before
Yeah,
that?
there's other Quetzalcoatl images, and they're all very similar, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you go on Wikipedia, there's several images of him.
Okay, go ahead, play this.
I'm Curly Tlapoyawa, an archaeologist and cultural consultant specializing in Mesoamerica. I want to briefly touch on why expertise is so important when it comes to researching our ancestral cultures. And I'm going to use the example of a mistake involving the Feast of Quetzalcoatl, a Mexica ceremony celebrating the rebirth of the sun during the winter solstice. Quetzalcoatl translates to the raising of the banners in the Nahuatl language. This refers to the multiple banners that are constructed to decorate the various temples and sacred centers associated with this feast. Now, when the Spanish cronistas wrote about the Feast of Quetzalcoatl, they truncated the word Quetzalcoatl to the first three letters, P-A-N, pan, leaving us with La Fiesta de Pan, or the Festival of Pan. This shortening of words in colonial Spanish was pretty common, as paper was in short supply, and this was an effective way of saving space. Spanish friars had developed an entire method of shorthand to accomplish this. Well, the problem arose when a non-expert looked at these writings and didn't account for this shorthand, and La Fiesta de Pan became erroneously translated as Festival of Bread. Pan is bread in Spanish. This simple mistake can cause this individual's research into Mexica festivals to go entirely off the rails, and it completely distorted the actual meaning of the festival, all because someone without adequate training decided to claim something without adequate evidence. Expertise matters, context matters.
It makes sense to me that if a group of people were conquered by white people who showed up on boats and dominated the society, that they would have a great influence on a lot of the myths and cultures. And not only that, but that they would heavily discourage deviation from the changes that they've made to those myths. And if you did that over the course of one generation, you would have a complete different narrative.
What intrigues me is that whether he's described as having white skin or a beard or not, we have a tradition of a civilizing hero, Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, Bochica in Colombia, Viracocha in Bolivia, depicted as a bearded individual who comes in a time of chaos, who teaches certain skills and then leaves. This tradition is a Pan-American tradition.
No,
David Carrasco, I think you have to respect the work of David Carrasco, has drawn attention to this, and to the notion that the magical pen of Cortez could somehow have hoodwinked an entire continent into making up myths. And I just don't think that's credible at all. I don't understand what your video is telling us either.
My video is trying to explain the complexity of difficulty of interpreting Spanish sources. Can I show a different video that talks about the complexity of Quetzalcoatl as a figure?
Sure.
Can you play the video by, the one by Marika Stoll, but not the hallucinogens one, the other one.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marika Stahl. I'm an archaeologist and research associate at Indiana University. I also live in Oaxaca and work closely with rural indigenous communities. It's been claimed that archaeologists do not engage with indigenous myths. This is simply not true. But once again, context matters. For example, the Quetzalcoatl myth that Graham frequently cites was written 100 years after the conquest by Hispanicized indigenous scribes who were educated by Spanish priests, hence the overtly Christian overtones of this myth. But let's examine an indigenous Mixtec story recorded prior to the conquest. Several gods, including Quetzalcoatl, or Lord Ninewind in Mixtec mythology, perform a mushroom ceremony and create the known world at Apoola. During this ceremony, Lord Ninewind plays music by scraping a stone around a human skull. This is a completely different picture of Quetzalcoatl than the one we get from the post-conquest myth preferred by Graham. In fact, in the Mixteca Alta today, when asked by anthropologist John Monahan to draw Quetzalcoatl, his indigenous volunteers drew a plumed serpent surrounded by clouds. Again, context matters.
And so the key thing I'm trying to say here is that Quetzalcoatl, all these different figures, they're not all one thing that you lump together. There's a variety of different traditions. You pick and choose the one that you prefer for your story, which is fine. I think that your investigations and your beliefs are totally cool. I'm not going to convince you otherwise. Same with people listening. I'm trying to show the facts here and just how complex the situation is of indigenous myths, of archaeological evidence. We have a lot of different evidence.
A Pan-American myth of a bearded civilizer could not have been imposed on the indigenous population entirely by Spaniards. So that's my view. That's David Carrasco's view as well. Again, if you look at my response to the SAA's attempt to get Netflix to reclassify my show as science fiction, you'll find detailed information on that there. Let's
Do you mind
move on.
sharing my screen really quickly?
Can I pause you for a
sure.
second, though? We know that once indigenous people are colonized, that they try to at least alter their beliefs and, if not indoctrinate them into whatever beliefs they have. And we have recent evidence for that in North America with how Native Americans were treated when they were put on reservations and brought into school systems and forced Christianity and told that they couldn't use their language. I mean, we have very recent evidence of human beings trying to impose their ideas on the people that they've conquered. It makes sense to me that that would be something that would also would have been done by the Spaniards that entered Mexico.
Yeah. I'm not persuaded by that in this case. The myth is too widespread, and that constant reference to a bearded figure is very odd. And as a civilization bringer in a time of chaos, in a time of disaster after a great cataclysm, again, I mean, Flint and I can disagree on this. I'm intrigued by that information, and I don't think that the indigenous peoples of the Americas were so easily hoodwinked by the Spaniards.
I don't think it's hoodwinked. I think it's conquered.
And I also think it's a lot more complex than that. So I study ancient Greek mythology, and you can see how these oral traditions change over time anyway, even without being conquered, right? Mm-hmm. You can see, for example, the weapons, the spears and the shields that Homeric heroes use. Sue Sherritt has an article on this. And so, you can see how Achilles' spear changes its description from a big Bronze Age style spear, the kind of spear that we see in Bronze Age graves. And then the next line, he has a smaller Iron Age style spear, the kind of thing that we see painted on Iron Age pots. And so, you can see how these oral traditions adapt to what's going on around them. And I think that that's important to recognize here with these kind of traditions that are written down by, Spanish-educated indigenous people and by Spanish priests as well.
Also, that you must take into consideration, I would imagine that a lot of these people can't read. And that they're actually probably not only being conquered by the Spaniards, but they're also being imposed upon with their language, which we know to be fact, which is why Mexicans speak Spanish.
Some of these traditions were recorded by Bernardino de Sahagún within 20 years of the conquest. Bernardino de Sahagún is relied upon extensively by archaeologists.
Within
other
20
myths,
years after the conquest,
After
though?
the conquest,
Right,
yeah,
but man, you could do a lot in 20 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, there's just no evidence for these kind of culture heroes with this color skin or those kind of
Let's take a
beards
bathroom
that
break.
I don't care about the color skin. I do care about the culture heroes.
Okay, we'll take a bathroom break. We'll come back. Much more to talk about. Okay.
Thank you all.
All right, we're back.
I'd like to pick up on this issue of Quetzalcoatl and on Sahagún and on the interpretation of indigenous traditions. And this is in my reply to the Society for American Archaeology and their attempt to have my series reclassified as science fiction, where they suggest that all these stories were made up. David Carrasco is a leading scholar of the Americas, and he writes, "I have no doubt that Cortés was striving to impress the royal mind with his extraordinary management skills, or that his literary craft was elegant and profoundly political. What is challenging to me is Glendinnin's, she's just another one of these archaeologists who say that it was all made up, Glendinnin's claim that this Spanish political fiction of both Quetzalcoatl returning and Moctezuma's vacillation and collapse was picked up by Sahagún, who powerfully reinforced it, erroneously thinking it was an Indian belief when in fact the ruler's gesture of abdication was a very late dawning story, making its first appearance 30 or more years after the conquest. The stunning implication is that this Spanish fiction, the story of Moctezuma's paralysis, parades down the years through the literature and scholarship and is internalized by commentators less wary than Clendenin, all the way to Leon Portilla, who falls unconsciously under Cortez's charismatic pen along with the rest of us. This means that Leon Portilla's extensive Nahuatl training and sense of the Aztec ethos, not to mention Sahagun's profound familiarity with Spanish native exchanges, contribute no effective critical stance in relation to the Spanish literary craft, which later Spaniards were not aware of and which a number of Indians internalized as their own. I'm quoting from David Carrasco here. I'm simply stating that this issue about Quetzalcoatl is more complicated than Flint would perhaps wish us to believe.
Well, no, I've stated from the very beginning that it's extremely complicated, that there's a lot of different versions of Quetzalcoatl mythology, and so I think that it's wrong to say that there's only one version of that. And
I don't say there's only one.
Well, you only use one in your argument, and
That's
so
true.
I tend to think, though, also that this is fairly irrelevant at this point, because I think what we're still missing is any kind of accurate archaeological evidence with dates. So when you go, for example, to the Olmec heads, or you talk about Quetzalcoatl, or when you talk about any of the kind of evidence that you have in Yonaguni and underwater, we're still missing dates and how this relates to your larger hypothesis of a lost Ice Age civilization. And so I think that that's important to think about well-dated evidence. So do you mind if I go into my argument about the domestication of plants and food and things like that?
Sure.
Okay.
Could I just, since we
Sure.
talked about Danny Hillman and Gunung Padang.
Do you have anything in this book about the Olmecs?
No, not really. I mentioned them briefly. I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth.
Could you explain that to people that maybe
in Fingerprints of the Gods? Yes. So it's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. Again, we don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people because that rubber-producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. What they're most famous for is these huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale of up to 20 to 25 tons in weight, and which have curious features which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic Native American features.
Keep that up.
But one of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature. That Native Americans are have a very complex genetic story with very many different elements brought into it, and we shouldn't be necessarily surprised by the supposedly non-Native American look of these Olmec heads.
What do we think those helmets were that they were wearing?
Nobody knows, because no physical example of such a helmet has ever been found, just like no physical example of an Egyptian pharaoh's crown has ever been found. All we see is the stone reproductions of them.
Do they universally wear these helmets in these stone reproductions?
They pretty much all wear these helmets in the Olmec stonework. There's another fascinating figure from La Venta, one of the Olmec sites, which is the earliest ever image of a plumed or feathered serpent. The feathered serpent is a famous icon in Central America. Quetzalcoatl, who's the god of peace, the bringer of civilization, who is associated, for example, with the famous pyramid of Kukulkan, which is just another name for Quetzalcoatl at Chichen Itza, where on the spring equinox a shadow effect creates the image of a serpent coiling down the stairway and joining with the carved head of the serpent. There's the image from La Venta. That's the earliest image of a plumed serpent in the Americas. And sitting in the middle of it, and I made a big deal out of this because I think it is a big deal in Magicians of the Gods, sitting in the middle of it is this human figure who's holding this strange bag in his hand. And it's just a fact that those identical bags are found in ancient Sumer in the hands of individuals who were considered to be civilization bringers, and they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lost.
When I interrupted you to talk about Quetzalcoatl, what were you about to say?
I can't remember.
Oh.
I'm in California. I've been smoking lots of dope, you know.
We were talking about different things in the Amazon. Should we rewind and figure out what we said?
Yeah, the serpent god you were talking about.
Before Quetzalcoatl, before that. I have another question. The Olmecs, you were talking about the genetics of these people that live in Native Americans, that they vary widely. But the Olmecs seem to have very similar features, the thick lips, the wide noses. Why do we think that is?
Well, this is part of a curious mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous skulls in parts of Brazil, which appear to show very strongly Polynesian or African features, very much like the features that we see on the Olmec heads. And a number of archaeologists who got into trouble with their colleagues for this have used that to argue many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that the settlement story of the Americas is much more complicated than we've realized. And what the DNA is doing is it's telling us that there was something really weird happened with settlement. You see, what happened with those African or Polynesian-looking skulls was that they were tested for DNA when DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. And what that DNA showed was that they were more closely related to modern Native Americans than they are to any other people in the world. So the notion that there was some connection with Polynesia or Africa was dismissed. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanesians, with those kind of features, now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to find out what that is. They've always fascinated me. The Olmecs, it's always been such a strange image, the large heads with the helmets on them, and how do they universally look like that? I mean, all
of the features are very, very similar.
Wow.
They're very, very, very similar.
And
quite,
always
quite
with the
lips.
helmets.
And almost always. I won't claim that every single Olmec head has a helmet of it, because I think I've seen one that didn't. It's quite a while ago since I explored the Olmec area. But what's fascinating about them is they are supposedly the first high civilization of Central America, that they create structures on a massive scale, that you can see connections between them and the later Maya. That whole mystery of the Mayan calendar was clearly inherited from the Olmecs. It wasn't something the Maya made up. The Olmecs used that same symbolism. So the Mayan calendar is actually an Olmec calendar, and if we then consider the possibility that the Olmecs may just be the latest, the earliest surviving manifestation of that calendar, it could go back much further than that.
And the Americas are very mysterious. It's very comparable to Egypt. It was just the amount of questions that haven't been answered is insane, and the Olmec world is fascinating. And so, there's Graham in Fingerprints of the Gods, he talks about how the Olmecs, he thought that they may have like African features, and of course that was 1995, and so I don't know, 2015 you guys are talking, and he's like, well, I published that then, but DNA research has come out that says that these people don't have African DNA in them, and that maybe this is Polynesian, maybe this is Australasian people intermixing, and that's why they have this unique look, whatever. But in the Olmec world, there's this monument that is actually called El Negro, and you look at it, and it's not an Olmec. It is an African man. And so I post about this on my X account, and I just kind of list everything I've seen in the Olmec world, and I'm like, this is really fascinating. Maybe this is evidence of Africans who were in the Olmec world. And I hadn't seen this monument before I saw it in person, because you go in the Olmec realm or the region in Mexico, and you go to these museums and you look at the log or the ledger that people have been on, and nobody has visited this museum in the last 4 months, and before that it was 6 months before that. And these monuments just kind of sit underneath these metal roofs, to protect them from the rain. And it's like this completely lost civilization.
Is there an image of this that's available online?
Yeah. There we go. So if you pull up an Olmec head, you'll see that these guys are very different looking, and especially if you can get there we go. Look at okay, so that's so that's a regular Olmec head. So you can see that these are two different races of people. The Olmecs have very soft features, round faces, big eyes, big lips, kind of big noses. They have very soft features. And this El Negro monument has these high cheekbones, this defined jawline, intense.
But isn't there a lot of variety just in, like, let's just say Italians? There's
a
lot of variety.
Absolutely.
So couldn't this just be someone who's on a spectrum of features? That, I mean, I don't think it's that much different than
you don't
the
think so?
Olmecs.
Well,
no. When I'm looking at it, I could imagine, like, there's, like I said, just my nationality, Italian. So there's Italians with very thin faces, and there's these big thick ones, and people vary quite a bit. There's enough similarities that I could say, those could be the same people.
Well, the only counter I give to that is when you visit the Olmec realm, you see a lot more than just the heads. You see a lot of Olmec faces, dozens and dozens and dozens of them, maybe well over 100. And when you've seen them all, and you kind of get a gist of the way they generally look, this guy will really stand out. I took a group of students there, and we all, as soon as we all came in and saw it, based on everything we'd been seeing for the past week, it immediately stood out to us.
Well, certainly the thick brow is unique.
Well,
all the other Olmec are wearing helmets.
And that hair as well. It's kind of that curly hair, and or at least it looks like it to me. And so anyways, he could be Olmec. I don't, my identity is not tied up in what I think this is or is
also,
not.
Olmec could be African, very, very clearly. Like that one on the left, easily could be an African man.
Which one? This guy right here?
This one, the one next to the white one, to the left of that. Right there. It easily could be an African man.
It certainly does look that way, but I was on a plane to Mexico a couple months ago, and I was going into the Olmec realm, and I was like, I wanted to take a picture of this guy. I'm looking to the left of me, and he was an Olmec man sitting next to me, and he looked like, he didn't look like any Mexican I've ever seen. There's something there with the DNA of the Olmec people that is definitely connected with something else that you don't see if you go to the Maya realm, that you don't see if you go to Mexico City. They have something in their DNA. They have this very specific look about them, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm looking, and I'm like, this is an Olmec guy next to me.
So fascinating, because it closerly could have been African explorers that made it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Could we look up look up the Traveler Olmec monument, if you would, please, Jamie. It's the Traveler. I want to call him, I think he's Monument 13. There's another one called Monument 19 that we should look at. But he's this man that's very clearly not, there we go, top left, the one that's on Reddit. In fact, this might be my post on Reddit. Yes, sir. So this guy right here, all right. So this is really, really fascinating. So let's diagnose this. All right, so flags. Flags are invented, this is very unknown fact. Flags are invented, or the first place that we have evidence for it is along the Nile Valley, on these pre-dynastic pots, which they're not the stone vases, but just like clay pottery. They would make little paintings on them, and people had these river boats that had these flags on them, and the flags would say what city you had come from or what village you had come from. And so flags are an old world thing. We don't have any evidence of flags in the New World. All right, he's also wearing a turban. He's got this big turban that's draping off the back of his head, and he very clearly has this distinct beard that's popping out. Now, Native Americans, sometimes they can, they're Asiatic. They have Asian DNA, and Asians don't really grow typically. Sometimes they'll grow the little stash and a little bit of a beard here, but they don't have that big thick beard that you would see, like in Europe or along the Mediterranean in the Middle East. And so this guy has this big thick beard, and then he's got boots on his feet as well. And we think that these are these glyphs that you see to his left and right. These are really, really early Olmec glyphs, and they interpret that foot to the left as saying that he came from somewhere. He was a traveler. And so the thought here is, so this is around 900 BC, give or take a little bit. They really have no idea when these are made. Like, you go to all the monuments and it says made somewhere between 1500 BC and 400 BC. And they'll say 1500 BC and 400 BC. And so they really are uncertain about how old a lot of these monuments are.
Make it big again, Jamie, please.
But if we shoot for dead center 900 BC, the Phoenicians out of the Mediterranean are launching these sailing expeditions around the coast of Africa. These are the ancient world's greatest sailors that we know of, and so there were like experimental archaeological or scientific, expeditions done that show if you would send one of these early Iron Age boats, or if you send any ship out of the Gates of Hercules or the Strait of Gibraltar, and you send it out into the Atlantic, and it drifts just a little bit too far without turning south along the African coast, it will be carried by a current across the Atlantic Ocean down into the Bahamas, the Caribbean, and straight into the Gulf of Mexico. And if that had happened, if people who had looked like they're in the old world, like this guy, if that had happened, somebody from the old world, the largest civilization at the time, the empire in this area, would have been the Olmecs. And the reason I feel so strongly about that is because we do not have flags, turbans, or boots in the ancient Americas. This guy looks nothing like a Native American, and the flag, turban, and boots are all old world features.
You know what's fascinating to me, too? The image on the lower right of the bird's head looks very similar to the carvings on Göbekli Tepe.
Doesn't it?
Yes,
doesn't it?
Very. The curve of the beak, that's
Yes.
not how birds' beaks look. Like, that's a very distinct style of artwork.
Well, and it's
See if
this,
you can find the images of the birds from Göbekli Tepe.
it's this raised relief art style. So people talk about it a
Yes.
lot with Göbekli Tepe. I mean, think about this. This is 11,600 years ago, and you have artisans and stonemasons who have been practicing for so long that now they're able to take a blank piece of stone and carve the face off to reveal the artwork from underneath it. Not carve the artwork into the stone,
Right.
but carve the stone away and reveal this sculpture from underneath. How similar does that look? It's bizarre, right?
Real similar.
And so it's the exact same kind of art style that you see in the Olmec realm.
Exactly, the 3D stone carvings. Instead of carving it directly into the stone, carve the stone around it. They're both doing the same thing. It takes a lot of time.
I mean,
A lot more
could
effort.
you imagine?
Weird stuff. It's also like the idea that this is documenting time. That the handbags or whatever those things are, what it actually is the sun going over the earth.
You know, I'm writing a paper about this, but this might be a good place to talk about it. So, you know, the handbag mystery is very fascinating. We have them in Assyria. We have them Mesopotamia. As far as I know, I don't think one's been found in Egypt. You can see them on the top of those T-pillars in Göbekli Tepe, and there's one in the Olmec realm. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Monument 19, if we could look that up. Dude, I think it's the coolest handbag. And when I saw it in person, I jumped. I had been
That's
waiting
crazy.
years to see
it's
it.
the same thing?
Olmec Monument 19. So this guy, he's wrapped in. He's sitting in Quetzal. He's sitting in Quetzalcoatl. Could you do the one at the top left where we get the full picture? There we go. So this stone is probably about this big. It's probably about this big, and it sits on a table like this. So he's sitting inside the Feathered Serpent, Quetzalcoatl. And so he's sitting inside the Feathered Serpent, and he's holding this handbag. And I'm not sure. So he has this, and if you see, he has a Feathered Serpent mask around his head as well. I'm not sure what exactly is above him. There are actually two. It's really hard to make it out, but what's above him, that little box-looking thing, is some kind of box that's being held up by two birds on each end. But the important thing here is the fact that this is the first depiction of the feathered serpent in all of Mesoamerica that we know of, and it might be the oldest handbag known as far as what we have official dates for. And so the idea here is that he's some kind of sacred shaman, bringer of enlightenment, bringer of knowledge, something like that. And so I had been on the hunt for another handbag. Everywhere I go, I'm always looking for a handbag. I was in Cambodia a couple weeks ago. I'm going around the temples of Angkor Wat, and there's hieroglyphs and carvings all over the walls. I'm looking for a handbag. I can't find one. But when I was in central Mexico, I was at a site called Cacaxtla, and I found another handbag person. I've never officially published it. It's on my X if you'd want to look it up.
What is the timeline for that one?
They don't really know. When you look at the monument, it says anywhere from 1400 BC to 400 BC. That's just what they think. I mean, the Olmec realm is so uncertain, and we don't have hard dates for almost anything. They appear on this historical timeline as a fully fledged civilization capable of creating what you're seeing from the very beginning. Just like so many civilizations, it's like as soon as they arrive as soon as they arrive in the world, they're doing everything to the fullest capacity, and we don't have any evidence in the Olmec realm of them working their way towards being able to do things like this. It's just from the very beginning they're able to make monuments like this, move these 50-ton Olmec heads. The largest head is this. You'll find this interesting. So there was a nautical engineer that MEC, which is an organization I'm with. It's the Maya Exploration Center. It's run by Dr. Ed Barnhart. I'm a member of it, and one of the guys that worked with us traveled into the Olmec realm. He's a nautical engineer. He's fascinated with how were the Olmecs moving these huge heads up and down these rivers? So they live in like the rivers, swamps. They have to cross some mountain ranges. How are you getting these heads 90 miles away from the Sierra de la Tuxtla volcanic belt? That's where they're pulling the basalt from. Because we found unfinished heads like at the base of these big basalt quarries. And they're transporting them 90 kilometers away through, like I was saying, rivers and
90
valleys.
miles or kilometers?
I think it's kilometers. It's kilometers as the crow flies. I'm pretty sure. Okay. And so much further when you're actually dealing with the complications of the terrain. And so he was fascinated, like, okay, how do they get them to the river? And then how do they get them on the boat? And when it's on the boat, how exactly does this work if they're transporting it by boat? And it's kind of the same mystery in Egypt too, right? Like how do the nuances of these things work? So he devised this algorithm or whatever where you could put in the hypothetical size of your Olmec raft and put in the hypothetical size of an Olmec head into this database or whatever. And when you made a raft that was too big to go down the narrow stretches of the Quetzalcoatl River, which is like the Olmec's Nile River, when the raft was too big and too wide to actually go down the river and you put a 5-ton Olmec head on it, it would sink that raft. But the smallest Olmec head is 6 tons and the largest one is 52 tons. So how are they doing it? And this is something that like all archaeologists have quietly known. This idea of they're just being transported on these simple balsa rafts must be wrong. It's unexplained. How are these things being done? And I just find this realm really fascinating.
Wow. It is and then do they even know what language they spoke?
No, we don't know what language they spoke. We don't even know what they called themselves.
Have you ever been to Teotihuacan?
No, I've never been there. I heard it's amazing, though.
Something really interesting happened to me there. Now, not only is this square that we went to and stand on this earth mound, and this guy whose nickname was Gorilla giving us this wonderful tour, just a spot, the most romantic tour ever of this place for such a rough place. And he goes, wait right here. And we're in this giant square, and he runs down this dirt mound about, I don't know, say 150 feet away, 200 feet away, and he goes, can you hear me? And it was like, oh my God, I could hear him. He goes, this square was built with these mounds here to be able to speak at this voice to 250,000 people.
Whoa.
And I was like, what? And then we walk. And
right there? Is that it up there? Well,
yes.
On that screen too.
Well, it's that way and then go left.
You could look this way so you don't have to look backwards.
Yeah.
So over here. So
if we were to see that square, if we were to go straight around that pyramid and make a left, that's where those mounds are. And the other thing is, in these, that's the same shot from a different angle. That's near where these shaman lived. The shaman had quarters, like an area of this place. Oh. And there's these sort of things, and I said, what are these? And he said, they're reflection ponds. I said, oh, like for reflecting. And he goes, no. for reflecting. And I'd never considered that you don't look at the stars by going, but that really you look down and you mark. So in 7 years, when it comes around again, you're like, pattern. Because I'm always like, how do you look up and learn a pattern of that?
Right.
But by looking down.
So that's crazy. So they had ponds just to look at the reflection of the stars and map them out.
Yeah, the shaman did. That was like in their neighborhood. And the way you were a shaman is if you had a birthmark on your head when you were born, they immediately were like, 2 boards, rope, and just put 2 boards and roped you and began a lifetime of like, so you're a shaman. Which if you had a lifetime of that, you'd be like, hi, shaman. Hey, shaman. I mean,
so it's like being born a royal.
Squeeze the shaman. Don't squeeze the shaman.
Even more weird, right? Because you don't have a history or a bloodline of it. It's just
it's the study of what we are, and that is significant. Mm-hmm. Because it felt to me immediately like, well, everyone can't do that. We need, you don't have a thing on you, so
if you don't have the birthmark.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good entry, at the gate.
When you went to the Aztec temple as a musician, when you're sitting there, did it make sense? Like the acoustics, like the way it's set up, does the way the sound works, does it make sense to you? Like how they constructed it?
It left a very lasting feeling of that we're supposed to be here, and that it really restored a lot of faith in humanity. I didn't focus on the ritualistic murder that was going on there. It was just that's the one set of people. The other set of people built this, and they knew, and much like the Great Pyramids that are really, in the shape of Orion's belt, exactly that same concept of like, what's going on here matters, and if that is your focus. Think of how wonderful it could be, Like, how did those people know how to make that with without the, they say without the wheel? That would be like really hard.
That seems insane. Yeah, the Aztecs didn't have the wheel, right? Allegedly. Yeah, how the fuck did they do all that? Well, at least the way they did it physically, you can kind of we know that they murdered 80,000 slaves in a period of just a few days after the construction of that temple.
Yeah, so that was like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it.
I think they knew that they were going to be slaughtered. I think it was kind of like part of the gig.
Yeah, well,
maybe I'm wrong with that. I might be wrong about that.
Well, it doesn't. With that many people, it wouldn't sound surprising that you'd have some cooperation. I mean, it's hard to imagine 80,000 people at once going, sorry, what? And not being like, well, fuck this, man.
Yeah.
That sounds like a cooperative event to me somehow.
Unless they were somehow or another locked up and they brought them out one by one.
That's an awfully big cage you've got there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, 80,000. That's quite an arena.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you'd have to build an extra one of those just to hold them.
Yeah, that's like a giant football arena filled with
it's
people.
It's that big.
Yeah.
It's that big. And what struck me as just because I play music is I thought, okay, that means these acoustics are so perfect. Like how do you discover that? Are you in a canyon and you're like, wow, this sounds, can you hear me over there? And then you sort of triangulate and start doing the geometry for how that works. And like, oh, quick, someone invent geometry first though, because I don't know. How does that, how manifest itself, that understanding?
Yeah, how many thousands of years did it take before they figured out how to construct something?
Yeah, where someone on their deathbed is like, wait, one last thing about acoustics.
Sound kind of bounces off shit.
It's got to be shaped like this.
Yeah.
With the Pythagorean theorem,
I've never been to any of the Aztec temples, but I went to Chichen Itza and saw some of the Mayan temples. And it just, whenever you're at a place like that, that's just magical, that's so fucking old and so amazingly constructed, you just think, what the fuck was it like to live back then? Yeah. Like, do we have a terrible idea of what they were like?
Of course.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, but it sort of dawned on me at some point that it was like, oh, you mean the people that wrote our history wrote it as from the perspective of, by the way, we're way better. But okay, here's the story of these other people.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like by some kind of dickhead winner.
Right. A dickhead winner with guns.
Yeah. Before we get started, I'm better than the person I'm going to tell you about.
Yeah. But we can't, even though we can't do what they did.
Because what is the emotion when you're in that space? I'm trying to think of the right word to describe how I felt there.
Right.
And I guess
it's awe, right?
Yeah, it really is. It is awe, but reverence. Also there's almost reverence, and there's almost like some strange gratitude.
Yeah,
like where you're like, thank you for. I'm so thankful to be part of this, even just by living in a time to appreciate this.
Yeah, yeah.
It feels like knowledge expanding that I don't have, so I just feel like, oh, if I could have a piece of that, if I could understand a piece of that. But just standing there is sort of understanding it.
Right. We have such an egotistical perspective when it comes to our personal civilization that like this with the internet and with cars and with planes and all that. This is the best way to be.
There's a word for it. I can't. Can you try to find such a thing? Please.
What is the word?
I don't. There's a word for the word. Definition is to believe that the era you're in is the finest of them all.
Yeah.
Up to this point. I think.
Yeah, I've heard that word. I know what you're saying.
It's some kind of dickhead syndrome.
Exactly.
It certainly was created by a man. There's some guy was like, do the fucking shit.
I don't think it was a girl. If it was, she was like one of them alt-right female chicks.
But don't you wish that there was like a supportive mother who was like, yeah, sure, honey, you're the best. This is the best.
You're number one.
Just don't worry about
the pyramids.
Yeah, don't worry about him, guys. He's fine. You're the best.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with the Native Americans and the settlers, that the settlers were imposing their lifestyle, but the people that experienced the Native American lifestyle, they wanted to stay living like that.
For sure. Well, I think because it omitted so many of the things that the European culture was bringing.
Yes.
It seems like a distinct possibility that the European perspective, like when Pizarro and all that, was it 12 of them conquistadors killed like 1,000 natives in a matter of hours? When they land, they're looking for gold everywhere.
Right.
And at first, they have this belief that something big will come across the water and be their god. And here comes a ship with a bunch of dirty assholes that literally, factually dirty assholes have ridden across a boat. And I think about that perspective where they obviously were like, these people are nice, but I've had enough of this. They should have invented ships. We're better, so let's kill everyone here.
Yeah, well, Cortez
such
and
an ego. That's
right?
what I mean, Cortez.
Yeah,
Cortez. That's who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on because I don't think previous to that time they'd ever seen anyone on a horse before.
No, and come across. You imagine a big boat and then a few horses where they're like, what the fuck is...
Yeah.
Gary, come over and look at this. It's impossible to fathom.
A man riding a beast. They're probably like, what in the fuck is...
With like rusty armor from being on a fucking boat for months.
Yeah.
Like looking like shit. Being desperately like... Like... I imagine their relief when they come off on these horses with this armor and all this stuff and they're like, they're cool. This is going to be easy, I mean, at first they must have thought maybe we could do this with some goodwill, but quickly it's like, you guys are too primitive. We're just going to take over here.
I doubt they even thought they were going to do it with goodwill. I don't think there was any goodwill back then. I think people were just murdering people.
You think that there's perhaps that more people took more lives in a way,
well,
like for per capita or something?
I think that it was a more brutal way of taking lives. I'm sure people take more lives today in war, but I think back then it was it was hands-on.
Right, but it seems like more percentage of the people that are alive had an opportunity or the possibility to kill someone than today.
Yeah.
Too. So it's like if you are with 150 people, all of which have killed at least 3 people.
Right.
That's an interesting group.
And then you land on a boat. And
you've been there for months and you're like, maybe you are like, we got to kill somebody and rape something and take something as quick as possible.
And you have no idea what the fuck they're saying because you can't speak their language. So it's easy to just...
And they're being nice.
Yeah.
So you're like, they're going to fuck these people up in 5, 4, 3. Like that silent count off. It's bizarre.
Well, that's the history of mankind is men showing up in boats and killing everybody that they met.
And then kind of doing their own version of a selfie on the dead body.
Yeah. Right.
Get
Getting
from this
paintings.
side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Draw me.
I would imagine what it would be like if you could be a fly on the wall when Montezuma met Cortez, just to be there and see what that was like when these people who had never encountered Spaniards before, and these guys show up in these boats
with two absolutely different beliefs and perspectives of what's about to go down.
What's crazy is that is why Mexico speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't get that in their head. Like, oh, Mexico.
It's why all of
speak
South America,
Spanish.
except for Brazil,
Right,
Brazil is Portuguese. You know.
Yeah. I mean, we don't get that in our head. Like, Mexico speaks Spanish. Why do they?
And
it's
has
not
horses.
Spain. Yeah, Spain's way the fuck over there. How is
Where
what?
they speak Spanish.
Yeah, like it makes no fucking sense. But then you realize, like, oh my god, they were conquered by the Spaniards. Whoa.
Yeah, and a long time ago.
Fucking time ago. Long fucking
because
time ago.
I because of having my music teacher as a young boy drilled the song in 1492 from Spain through wind and storm and
Right.
gale, the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa, that
1492.
which by my watch is a long time ago.
It is, but it's not. You know, like I had a joke in my act about the United States being founded in 1776. People live to be 100. That's 3 people ago. That's real, though. I know it sounds fucked up when you hear
Man,
it.
you're funny.
But
Yeah.
when you hear it, it sounds like, is he right? Like,
Well-
that's not right.
Well, what's
Like,
funny
wait a
is
minute, that
that's
is right.
totally true.
Yeah, it is right.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's
we just got here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, the thing is, anything that happens before you were born seems like a million years ago.
Of course, but also 1776 seems like yesterday to me. I wasn't alive, and I'm ready to admit that. But that seems like that is just very
Fucking
close. I'm
super
sure.
recent.
Yeah.
The handbag mystery is
Yeah.
very fascinating. We have them in Assyria. We have them Mesopotamia. As far as I know, I don't think one's been found in Egypt. You can see them on the top of those T-pillars in Göbekli Tepe, and there's one in the Olmec realm. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Monument 19, if we could look that up. Dude, I think it's the coolest handbag. And when I saw it in person, I jumped. I had been waiting years to
It's
see
the
it.
same thing.
Olmec Monument 19. So this guy, he's wrapped in. He's sitting in He's sitting in Quetzalcoatl. Could you do the one at the top left where we get the full picture? There we go. So this stone is probably about this big. It's probably about this big, and it sits on a table like this. So he's sitting inside the Feathered Serpent, Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah.
And so he's sitting inside the Feathered Serpent, and he's holding this handbag. And I'm not sure. So he has this, and if you see, he has a Feathered Serpent mask around his head as well. I'm not sure what exactly is above him. There are actually two. It's really hard to make it out, but what's above him, that little box-looking thing, is some kind of box that's being held up by 2 birds on each end. But the important thing here is the fact that this is the first depiction of the feathered serpent in all of Mesoamerica that we know of, and it might be the oldest handbag known as far as what we have official dates for. And so the idea here is that he's some kind of sacred shaman, bringer of enlightenment, bringer of knowledge, something like that. And so I had been on the hunt for another handbag. Everywhere I go, I'm always looking for a handbag. I was in Cambodia a couple weeks ago. I'm going around the temples of Angkor Wat, and there's hieroglyphs and carvings all over the walls. I'm looking for a handbag. I can't find one. But when I was in central Mexico, I was at a site called Cacaxtla, and I found another handbag person. I've never officially published it. It's on my X if you'd want to look it up.
What is the timeline for that one?
They don't really know. When you look at the monument, it says anywhere from 1400 BC to 400 BC. That's just what they think. I mean, the Olmec realm is so uncertain, and we don't have hard dates for almost anything. They appear on this historical timeline as a fully fledged civilization capable of creating what you're seeing from the very beginning. Just like so many civilizations, it's like as soon as they arrive in the world, they're doing everything to the fullest capacity, and we don't have any evidence in the Olmec realm of them working their way towards being able to do things like this. It's just from the very beginning they're able to make monuments like this, move these 50-ton Olmec heads. The largest head is this. You'll find this interesting. So there was a nautical engineer that MEC, which is an organization I'm with. It's the Maya Exploration Center. It's run by Dr. Ed Barnhart. I'm a member of it, and one of the guys that worked with us traveled into the Olmec realm. He's a nautical engineer. He's fascinated with how were the Olmecs moving these huge heads up and down these rivers? So they live in like the rivers, swamps. They have to cross some mountain ranges. How are you getting these heads 90 miles away from the Sierra de la Tuxtla volcanic belt? That's where they're pulling the basalt from. Because we found unfinished heads like at the base of these big basalt quarries. And they're transporting them 90 kilometers away through, like I was saying, rivers and
90
valleys.
miles or kilometers?
I think it's kilometers. It's kilometers as the crow flies. I'm pretty sure. Okay. And so much further when you're actually dealing with the complications of the terrain. And so he was fascinated, like, okay, how do they get them to the river? And then how do they get them on the boat? And when it's on the boat, how exactly does this work if they're transporting it by boat? And kind of the same mystery in Egypt too, right? Like how do the nuances of these things work? So he devised this algorithm or whatever where you could put in the hypothetical size of your Olmec raft and put in the hypothetical size of an Olmec head into this database or whatever. And when you made a raft that was too big to go down the narrow stretches of the Quetzalcoatl River, which is like the Olmec's Nile River, when the raft was too big and too wide to actually go down the river and you put a 5-ton Olmec head on it, it would sink that raft. But the smallest Olmec head is 6 tons, and the largest one is 52 tons. So how are they doing it? And this is something that like all archaeologists have quietly known. This idea of they're just being transported on these simple balsa rafts must be wrong. It's unexplained. How are these things being done? And I just find this realm really fascinating.
Wow. It is and then do they even know what language they spoke?
No, we don't know what language they spoke. We don't even know what they called themselves. The only reason we call them the Olmecs is because Cortez in 1519 to 1521, he's moving through Mexico to conquer Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. During this time, you have these Spanish chroniclers that are taking in information, but not at the rate that everything's being destroyed. All these people are dying from this disease and influenza. And there's a record of what the people who lived in the Olmec region are called at that time in 1520, let's say. And the Aztecs called them the Olmecs. In their language, Nahuatl, and those Olmec people, the name means the rubber people, or the people of the land of rubber. They produced rubber, and that's how the Olmecs were so rich so early on in time. But these are not... The people living in 1519 are not the Olmecs. The Olmecs have fallen, and there are other cultures that have risen and fallen in this same region as well. The Olmecs are far, 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 far into the distant past. The Aztecs maybe didn't even know who the Olmecs were. Whoa. So are you familiar with Teotihuacan?
Yeah.
The three massive. Well, you have the Temple of the Sun, the Temple of the Moon, and then the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, and they form this kind of like Orion's belt alignment similar to Giza. Well, when the Aztecs arrived in Mexico, Teotihuacan had been abandoned for almost 1,000 years, we think. So when they arrived, Teotihuacan is already gone. We don't even know the name of Teotihuacan. We don't know the name of the people. We don't know the name of the city. We know their relationship with other people around them, like the Maya were at war with Teotihuacan, but the civilization had already fallen. So when the Aztecs arrived, the Olmecs had been gone for almost 2,000 years at least. Wow. The Olmecs had already been gone. Teotihuacan had been gone for 1,000 years. The Maya had already collapsed. The Maya collapsed long before the Spanish got there. And so, it's just, again, like the Americas are just so mysterious, and there's so much to know there.
Is there any evidence that there was other species of human beings that existed in the Americas? Like we're finding in Russia, and there's many of them that are being discovered all over the world now, these subspecies of human beings.
Yeah. This is an issue that I go into in America before. And what first drew me into it was Denisova Cave in Siberia. I think everybody's heard of the Neanderthals, and these days I think everybody's heard of the Denisovans as well.
A lot of people haven't.
I guess a lot of people haven't. But first of all, let's take the Neanderthals.
Okay.
For a long time, it was held that the Neanderthals were stupid, primitive subhumans, shambling, lacking symbolism. Turns out that that's not true at all. The latest scientific evidence on the Neanderthals is that they were symbolic creatures, that they did do art, that they were in every sense human, and they were in every sense human because anatomically modern humans interbred with Neanderthals. You can't interbreed with another species. They clearly were human beings, but they looked rather different from us. And that's why certain populations in the world today still have 3 to 5% of Neanderthal DNA. Then in Russia, in Denisova Cave, they find a single pinky bone from a little finger. And they do the DNA testing on it. They're able to get a complete genome from it. And what they discover is this isn't a Neanderthal. This isn't an anatomically modern human being. This is another human species who they named the Denisovans. They think they're more closely related to Neanderthals than they are to anatomically modern humans, but they're clearly another human species. And they also interbred with anatomically modern humans. And Denisovan DNA survives, interestingly enough. It survives predominantly in Australasia, in Papua New Guinea and amongst Australian Aborigines. So as part of the research for this book, I went to Denisova Cave. I had an amazing, actually just incredible trip to Russia. I hadn't expected it to be like that at all. Siberia, I mean, America is vast, but my God, crossing Siberia, this is endless rolling plains, this just vast area.
How did you cross it?
We took a car. You can't travel independently in Russia. It's very difficult. You have to get permission, and you have to state in advance where you're going to be stopping off at. So what I found, and I just did so through the internet, was a local guy called Sergei Kurgin, who had a little tour business in Siberia, in the city of Novosibirsk. I got in touch with him. He found a translator who would translate my emails, and I said, we want to make this journey to Denisova Cave. And can you set this up for us and get all the permissions? And he did. And so we flew into Novosibirsk. Sergei and his translator, who turned out to be a Russian student who spoke good English, joined us. And we did this immense journey across Siberia.
How long did it take?
Oh, it took us 3 days to get to Denisova Cave. 3 days.
Driving every day?
3 days of driving every day. Some stopping off along the way. Incredible hospitality of the Russians that we were amongst. Very independent people who are living out there in the wilderness and who actually do know how to survive. It's the first time I've ever drunk milk fresh from the cow. Literally milked right out of the cow and poured down my throat.
How was it?
It was delicious. And the cream, I mean, thick cream. Very, so there was a lot of things about Russia that surprised me. Denisova Cave is a fascinating, beautiful place to visit. It's another example of a missing chapter in the human story that is beginning to be pieced together. It's obvious now that we were not alone, that there were multiple other human species who were human enough to interbreed with us and leave DNA.
And this Denisovan species was only discovered in, was it 2000 something?
Very recently, the 2000s.
Or something.
It's a very recent discovery, and
did they leave behind art? Did they leave behind art?
Better than that, they left behind certain physical objects which are extremely hard to explain. One of them is a green stone bracelet. And that bracelet is in the form of a torque, which was therefore slipped on sideways onto the hand. It's not a full ring, and a hole has been drilled through the bracelet, and from that hole it's been possible to reconstruct that a pendant was hung. Then the archaeologists started to take a look in detail at the drill marks on that hole, and what they discovered was a huge anomaly, that was drilled with a stable, fixed drill, and it was drilled at extremely high speed. This is thought to be 40 or 50,000 years old. There is not supposed to have been any such technology in that period that was capable of drilling with a stable fixed drill, and yet there it is, and there it appears. So there are also incredible, very fine needles, bone needles that the Denisovans made, very long ones, which suggest that they were stitching very heavy stuff together. And the suggestion has been, were they making skin boats, for example, to use to navigate? That would explain how they managed to get themselves to Australia, which is where the largest amount of Denisovan DNA survives today. There's one of those needles. So there are indications of strangely out of place technology amongst the Denisovans, which is 20, 30,000 years earlier in the human story than it should be. Those kind of needles, that kind of bracelet, you could expect to find them in what archaeologists call the Neolithic, but to find it in the Paleolithic is very puzzling and very odd, and it suggests that the Denisovans were certainly not shambling subhumans, that they were refined creatures.
Can you find out what year they discovered the Denisovans, Jamie? Can you Google that real quick? I want to say it's in the 2000s, but I mean, imagine that human beings have been around for this long. Here we are in 2019, and within the last decade or so, they figured this out.
Yeah, we're discovering new stuff about ourselves. We're discovering that our story is much richer, much more textured, much more layered than we thought it was. It's not a simple story. It's a very complicated story, and we ourselves are a hybrid species. We are the result of interactions with all kinds of different looking human beings, and the end result is ourselves. So it's not just that we carry Neanderthal or Denisovan DNA. In a sense, we are Neanderthals and Denisovans, and they are part of the anatomically modern human heritage. So you make a good point. The fact that this is only being discovered now, and that it's an incredibly important. I mean, it completely rewrites the story of our ancestry. The notion.
It says the 1970s.
1970s.
Okay, I'm way off.
The real work that's been done in Denisova Cave has been done in the 2000s, from 2006, 2007 onwards.
Genetic examinations.
That's when the major papers have been
2008. There
have been published.
Yeah.
Which have revealed the genome of the Denisovans and revealed the Denisovan connection to anatomically modern humans. The fact that we're only finding this out now, that we told the story of our past and weren't aware of this, raises the question, how much else in the story of our past is there that we're not aware of? Let's stop being so arrogant, so sure of ourselves, so confident in our findings. Let's be more tentative. Let's keep an open mind and see where it takes us. That's the main message that I have from all of this. And I think, and I hope that this will be an effect of this book. I'm not kidding myself that the archaeologists are going to jump on board overnight, particularly so since I'm very critical of American archaeology in this book. And I'm critical of it specifically and explicitly because of the dominance of the Clovis first model for so long, which prevented other research taking place.